Just really making sure your methods are tailored for beverages. Like we talk about all those constants that are used for beer for calculation, even for calculating calories, aren't necessarily correct for seltzers either, because they are a different beverage. They're very similar to beer, but also different. And then it's also your fermentation, like being aware what you're adding to your fermentation of your seltzers if you are fermenting your base in-house, and how that may affect your nutrition panel. So the nutrition testing helps make your FDA mandated nutrition label for your product. This is required for non-alcoholic beverages and your alcoholic seltzer beverages. The testing is really important for the alcoholic seltzers because with fermentation, we're actually having a hard time determining what is in the seltzer via database. So that's where the testing component comes in really important. We see like variable levels of potassium, for example, depending on yeast nutrients each individual brewery uses. And it's really hard after fermentation to determine how much of that is left. So the FDA Nutrition Panel is a legal mandated document. So the FDA can take your samples and test them off the shelf. And if they aren't in compliance, you will be getting a letter warning you about it, and it would require a recall. So making sure your FDA Nutrition Panel is in spec is very important to avoid recalls and extra costs. We work with very creative beverage entrepreneurs, so they're always releasing very new products. And then that's where a database gets very challenging because these products are so new and innovative. A lot of databases don't have all the information on the nutrition, and sometimes they contain so many ingredients, it's very hard to get all the nutrition information from your manufacturer. So testing can provide you that information a little quicker than digging into documentation and trying to figure out the calculations. We have the resources here to do the testing, which is the big part. Investing in lab equipment is very expensive investment at first, so doing testing through a third party kind of mediates that cost pretty quickly, especially if it's just a one-time testing you want to do. If you just have one brand and you need the nutritional testing for that brand, it does not make sense to try to bring that in internally. We work very closely with our lab partners in nutritional testing. We are the experts in beverages, while they are the expert in nutritional testing. So we work very closely with them, share analysis to make sure the nutritional testing is accurate and correct. So not only do you get the testing for the price, you also get our expertise and our knowledge with the price. You want to make sure someone's very knowledgeable about your product. Nutritional testing is very per product based. Some methods work for certain food analytes and some methods don't. So you want to make sure the person you're working for is knowledgeable and using the correct methods. That way you are getting accurate results. Otherwise, especially if you're using database, you definitely want to make sure you are knowledgeable about the product and very familiar with your formula, and that you have a commercial formula for database. That's one of the most common questions we get is database nutritional testing, and most people don't have a commercial formula. So knowing what that is and having it ready will definitely expedite the process. You could, if you didn't have a commercial formula, you could do it by testing, but the testing is $1,000 and it's quite an investment to make when you don't have a commercialized formula ready, especially because most likely you will change your formula as you grow and expand. So investing in that testing, just have to reinvest in it. If you change your ingredient supplier or change your flavors up a bit, it's a lot of money spent that could have just been saved for when you do have a commercialized formula. So it's usually when people are just about ready for their first big production run and they have their commercialized formula. You definitely want to do it before you have products, since nutritional testing does take 3 to 4 weeks. So you want to make sure you give yourself enough time to be able to make your labels correctly. A lot of people will do nutritional testing on their sample formulas that flavor houses make. just so they can get their labels ready before production. So it's a good balance of, yes, I'm ready for production, but I'm not there yet, and giving yourself enough time to get it done before you need labels and artwork and all the other stuff done. So when we do nutritional testing, you get a report of all your analytes, and you also get an FDA mandated label created for you as a template to start making your own label. So it really gets you started in making your label and getting you ready to be in stores. I know a lot of bigger stores require this. They want to review your label before they implement their product in their system. So it just mainly gets you ready to be in your stores. So with the new requirements, they were implemented in 2017, and now after the 3 years, everyone should be compliant, even small businesses, in 2020. So the main changes in the nutrition testing label was they made the calories a bigger font to stand out more, and serving sizes changed. Serving sizes actually got bigger to embody what people actually consume. And then another big change was added sugars and dietary fiber were added to the nutrition label. These can only be determined by your formula. So we can test for fiber and we can test for sugars, but without the formula, we don't know if you added the sugar in the formula or if the fiber that's in it is technically dietary. So that's kind of the new component of nutritional testing, is it's a combination of formula work and testing. And then the big change was changing the micronutrients. It used to be vitamin A, vitamin C, calcium, and iron. Now they no longer require vitamin A and C, and they require vitamin D and K along with the calcium and iron. And that's where we're seeing the most variability in seltzers, because potassium, vitamin K, is very much an additive as a yeast nutrient in fermentation. So all the seltzers we test don't have a constant base of potassium. They vary between breweries, manufacturers, and formulas. So you have two options with nutritional testing. You can do it via database or via testing. So just to talk about the testing standpoint, the testing is very simple. You can just go to thelabmn.com and download our service request form, and our fully FDA nutritional panel is N06 is the catalog number, and it's $1,000. And that way you would get all your analytes and you get a mock-up of your nutrition label. And then that usually takes about 3 weeks, depending on when we receive samples. Otherwise, you can do nutritional testing via database. This is usually a cheaper option. It starts at about $200 per sample, but it's really product based. You have to have a product that the databases have a lot of information on, and then also you would need your nutritional information from all your ingredient supplier, not the facts panel, which is commonly confused, the actual nutritional data. Because of rounding rules, you want to make sure that you have the exact number, not the rounded number, because as you dilute it in your formula, you could be experiencing rounding errors. So testing takes about 3 weeks, and then database, it depends on how quickly you can get documentation. It can be as quick as a week or as long as a few months, depending on how long that documentation takes to get collected. In 2019, when this nutrition label was first getting mandated and people were trying to transition it, we did see a lot of companies accidentally test for vitamin A and C, when that is not the requirement anymore. It's D and K. We also see people trying to test just for specific analytes instead of the whole nutritional panel, which definitely you can do. Because I know it's like seltzers don't have fat, so why test it? But then that sometimes can get almost as pricey as just doing the whole testing itself. And now you're trying to compile data yourself, versus if you pay for the whole testing, you get the nutrition facts panel, you just get it all there, and it's a bit more concise. So you definitely get the peace of mind with the backing of the third-party testing. If there was ever a question in your nutrition panel, you could send that to a supplier or distributor, and it's a good backing of, yes, no, I got this tested by a third-party lab, and it looks very good for your product to have those documentation on hand. Otherwise, like a lot of people do nutritional testing to try to determine their shelf life. So they'll do it at the beginning of their product shelf life to the end to make sure no nutrients are depreciating in their product, especially if you have like a caffeine beverage. That's very important to make sure the caffeine is stable the entire time. Or if you're supplementing your beverage with any of the vitamins that need to be called out, like calcium, vitamin D, potassium, you definitely want to make sure they're still in the beverage at the end of the shelf life. So you definitely want to start your nutritional testing once you are happy with your formula and your commercialized formula. That would give you the most time to either collect documents or to test it for nutrition before your production run and your label needs to be made. Other than that, like, you can kind of get away, like if you're in the pilot stage and you're trying to just get investors in your product, you can kind of get away with not doing nutrition label or really kind of guessing on it. You can use the nutrition facts and the ingredients you use and some math and figure out a mock-up version of it. But once you're ready to be in stores and be in front of consumers, that's definitely where you want a validated nutrition facts panel. So there's ways around it, and a lot of what we see with beverage entrepreneurs is suppliers are asking for it. You know, they're trying to get their product into a store and they want to see the nutrition facts panel before they will accept their product. So it's definitely something to keep in mind when you start, but obviously focus on making your commercialized formula first and making sure that's in spec before investing in nutrition testing. That's a great question. So that's where kind of testing for specific nutrients comes into play while you're playing with your formula. So a big part for beverage entrepreneurs is the calories, especially if they want to make light or low carb claims. That's one of the most common tests we get is for calories and carbs. Most people will test those first while they're still tweaking their formula. It's a way to save money. Testing just for calories and carbs it's like I think $100, $120 package versus testing for full nutritional is $1,000. And especially if you're sitting there and tweaking your formula. So if you have a nutrition that's very important to you, I would test it during your formulation process and make sure it's in spec. I don't know how many times we've had someone being like, I want a 100-calorie beverage, and we tested and it's 120. And now they have to go back and redo their formula. So with the popularity of seltzers, some other labs have had capacity issues. Currently, we do not have those issues. Turnaround times are staying around 3 weeks, and they're staying pretty consistent. And we'll let people know if that changes, especially with everything that's going on in the world. Most lab testing facilities aren't being too impacted by it, but some are. Some are losing employees because of sickness, but right now, we're all good to go and all ready to take on nutritional testing as it's sent in. Yeah, so seltzers are known to be pretty low in calories and low in carbs. So that's the most common test we get is calories and carbs on seltzer. The biggest kind of discrepancy we've seen with seltzers is they are treated sometimes like beer inappropriately. So especially with calculating carbs. So carbs is unique where we can't actually measure it. It is strictly a calculation. And this needs to be done by measuring protein ash and your real extract in your beverage. And you can't, there has been common factors for beer where you can just subtract the same number because beer was all about the same in protein and ash. We cannot do that with seltzers. They vary in protein and ash compared to beer. So making sure that is tested every time to ensure you are getting the correct carbs. And then a big thing for us too is with all these like light beverages and high gravity brewing where you're diluting afterwards, making sure you don't think your nutrition are going to dilute at the same factor. Nutrition testing is very unique. It has standard deviation, and especially with carbs, since it's only a calculation, just because you dilute it by half doesn't mean your carbs will dilute by half also. They don't have a linear relationship. Yeah, definitely with database, it's more of a collaborative. It's going to be a lot of back and forth with the technicians to ensure your database is correct and the most accurate. With nutritional testing, it is pretty simple. Once we get the samples in, we can test them and send them out, and you're going to get a mock-up of your nutrition label. And then on your end, you just have to determine what sugars are added and then what dietary fibers are actually dietary fibers, which is pretty easy in your formula. You know, if you're adding juice with 10 grams of sugar, that's your added sugar. So our most common request is for the seltzers, since that is the most popular beverage out there, and there's a lot of formulations behind it. But when it comes to non-alcoholic beverages that we test, it's a wide range, anywhere from energy drinks to teas to kombuchas. All beverage entrepreneurs are becoming very creative in their process. And I know even with probiotic beverages, they have new hurdles too, just like with seltzers, they're fermented, and that fermentation isn't always consistent. And making sure your nutrition is consistent with that is another hurdle that sometimes people don't think about that's non-alcoholic, but it's like, no, it's still fermentation, so it's going to vary. So we don't only just do nutrition and testing here, we do quality testing. We have a full service beverage quality testing lab in-house where we can test a lot of chemical analysis. So we can do your alcohol profiles, we can do density readings, pH, IBUs, color, pretty much anything that involves a spectrophotometer, we have that capability of doing. And then on the micro side, we can do a lot of micro testing for beverages. We use 3M Petri films to do our non-alcoholic micro testing. This is a really good range of microbial counts to ensure not only quality but safety. And then for our alcoholic testing, we always use ASBC methods. We do have PCR in-house, which is a very quick way to test if you have a beer spoiler, if you don't have a beer spoiler. So we have a wide range of offerings to help support brewers, and we're also trying to kind of get together some custom packages that are custom to specific breweries' needs and where they're at in their process, where we can help them out. If they are already invested in lab equipment, how can we help you out in just adding to that testing? Or you haven't invested in lab equipment at all, okay, how can we tailor our resources to give you the most impactful data? We have a lot of good experts on staff. We have Matt Hall, who's our master brewer, who has many years of experience in the brewing industry on a technical level. He is very knowledgeable. And then we also have Jerry Kosowski. There it is. She has over 50 years of brewing chemist experience, and she is a wealth of knowledge. She started at Stroh's, and then it turned to Hams, and then it turned into a bunch of other breweries, and she spent 20 years at Summit before she retired. Didn't like retirement, and now she's working with us, and she's a great resource also. If you ever have questions about your beer chemically, she's quite the expert. Yeah, my biggest advice is knowing what a commercialized formula is and having that ready. I think that's the biggest hurdle for beverage entrepreneurs, is just getting into the lingo of what is a commercialized formula, what do I have to supply, and then just knowing the timing, being mindful that nutrition testing is going to take time and it does affect your label. So setting those dates ahead of time is very useful, so you're not feeling rushed or have to post-production because your nutrition testing isn't ready yet. Just being mindful that it is going to take 3 weeks to do nutritional testing and fitting that in your plan.